TYT Sports, Ben and Michael with you. Your favorite holiday is?
Memorial Day.
Right. Mine is Purim. Thanks for joining us. Thanksgiving, my favorite holiday. I think yours as well. We're pretty good. Yeah. And football on Thanksgiving is great. It has always been great. I've always liked it. I will be very upset if the Lions and Cowboys tradition is removed. Mostly the Lions.
Mostly the Lions.
Yeah.
I don't really care because the Lions is the tradition.
That's right. The Cowboys have been there for some time, but the Lions is great. I don't care how bad they are. It doesn't make any difference. It's fun to watch the Lions. So we're going to look at sort of 5 or so. That's how we feel about lists. Great Thanksgiving moments, and I would like to start. Because I bet on the Lions on Thanksgiving. I mean, I guess maybe I haven't a couple of years. I've gone another direction, or maybe
I don't think I've ever not bet on the Lions. I've always wanted them to win.
Yeah, and they did not deliver. I mean, that has been a solidly losing bet. But in 1995, I don't know how well you remember this game, but because when did we become friends? We really didn't become friends.
Before then. I mean,
when did I go to Charleston? Right, 93.
Yeah,
right,
so 90 was at the genesis of our friendship.
Right. So in 95, but they played the Vikings on Thanksgiving, and they beat them 44-38. And I've always had almost every year from the time we started playing fantasy football.
The over.
Until I had Herman Moore.
Right.
And
Herman Moore, who went to college at the University of Virginia.
Wake Forest, that's right.
And God, you always do.
The Herman Moore went to Wake. Herman Moore, NFL player, went to Wake.
Right. Ever.
Yeah. Herman Moore. Look, it's funny. I remember him having some huge Thanksgiving games, and I remember him being huge in that game. He had 8 catches for 127 yards. That's it. It was not that great. It was good.
Was that Sean Moore to Herman Moore? Is that the Moore?
No, Scott Mitchell. Scott Mitchell was 30 of 45 for 410 yards and 4 touchdowns. I might have had Scott Mitchell in that too. There was a year that I had Scott Mitchell. By the way, I'm 0-11 this year, but there was an era there in the mid-90s when I couldn't go worse than 10-4.
Right.
But I am 0-11 this year. But I think what gets me is as I look at this game is that one, Brett Perriman caught 12 passes for 153 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
I might have had Brett Perriman, so I might have just had the most glorious day ever. But I am pretty sure that I had Jake Reed, who caught 6 balls for 149 yards.
Here's the great thing about this clip, this Thanksgiving clip, is that there's nobody watching it right now who is saying, me too.
That's not true. People had Jake Reed. Jake Reed was awesome. Jake Reed was good. No, let me rephrase that. Jake Reed was going to be awesome. Anyway, the Lions won at 44-38. That was a year that they weren't that bad, 95. And I just love sort of rooting for them on Thanksgiving. I become a Lions fan.
It's indoors. I've been places that are cold on Thanksgiving.
Right,
there's something nice about watching.
Something nice watching it. Sort of they're huddled up and they're warm. And you always have these expectations because the crowd is so fired up. And Aaron Rodgers comes in and they're like, they're going to beat the Packers today. And it's, and they get the ball, they drive down. Maybe they don't score, they kick a field goal. You're like, they're in it. And then it's 28-3 Packers.
Yeah.
Like seconds later, it's 28-3 Packers.
They've added a third game to Thanksgiving, which I think, I'm someone who never thinks there's too much football. I mean, there's the early game, which is great, then the later game, which is happening during dinner, and you're getting up on the East Coast to check the score, and there's always some guy who only follows. At every Thanksgiving, there's one guy who only follows football on Thanksgiving. Would you say that that's true? There's always some friend of your parents who's like, what's going on in the Cowboys game? He has no idea. He couldn't name a Cowboy. So you get up and you go look, and then you come back. Now there's another game. Until 2011, when, this is one of mine, the 49ers made their first appearance on Thanksgiving. It was fantastic.
In 2011? It took that long? Wow.
It took that long. They played the Ravens. And
in the night game.
In the night game. That was Bowl. Yeah, right. It was the HarBowl. The HarBowl.
The HarBowl.
Yeah. HarBowl Bowl. And
it was the Super HarBowl game.
That's right. Yeah. I'm sorry, the Turkey HarBowl.
Super Bowl.
Anyway, but it was on NFL Network, which nobody had then, right? So I had to call a bar and convince them to stay open on Thanksgiving because I would bring people to. So,
how many did you bring?
And they said if we get enough people, this is what happened. It was in New York that I did this. If we get enough people, this is in Long Island, we'll stay open. So I called and said, all right, great, thanks. About 97 minutes later, I go, yeah, hello, are you guys showing a game tomorrow night? Right. Hang up. Yeah, well, if we get enough people. And then, like, the next morning, hello. You're going to be showing the football game. We'd like to come. And so I get there, and of course, it's just the 4 people that I bring. Nobody else is there.
You know why? It was Thanksgiving.
It was Thanksgiving. It was a bartender, and we watched it, and he was great, and we tipped him really well. And
that's funny. It's a good story. Who won that game?
The Ravens did, except for that part.
In 1974, the Washington led Dallas 16-3 in the fourth quarter, or in the third quarter anyway, and Roger Staubach got hurt. It was a big game, both teams competing for a playoff spot, and I was 7, so it seemed like the most important thing that had ever happened. Right. And Staubach got hurt, and he was replaced by a backup who had, I think, never started a game. He had one start that year, but I think it was the next week after Staubach's injury, named Clint Longley. He'd gone to Abilene Christian University.
ACU.
And he had a big arm, and he had a nickname called like the Mad Bomber, but it was born from this game. He threw a couple of touchdown passes. He led the Cowboys to take a 17-16 lead, and then Washington came back and went up 23-17, and then Longley in the last minute threw a Hail Mary of 50 yards to Drew Pearson, who was just open. Like Drew Pearson ran a pattern, and they didn't cover him, and they could. I mean, like what play did you think they were going to run, right? And Clint Longley led the Cowboys to what was a devastating loss for me at the time at age 7, 24-23 on Thanksgiving. So, and I always thought this was it was one of the greatest comebacks in Cowboy history. They actually didn't make the playoffs this year, so I looked up Clint Longley just to see what happened to him, and here's what basically happened to him: nothing. He started 2 other games in his entire career, threw for a combined about 220 yards. He was 11 of 20 for, I think, 203 yards and 2 touchdowns in that game, and led them on another touchdown drive that ended with a run. He threw for those 200 yards. Staubach got hurt in the third quarter. So that was all in the third quarter. Then he barely exceeded that total in his 2 other starts. Then after the training camp, in the 1976 preseason, a couple years later, Staubach obviously still the quarterback, he punched Roger Staubach in the face.
Obviously.
And then what do you know? He was traded to the San Diego Padres for 1st and 2nd round picks.
He wasn't even traded to the Chargers. He was traded to baseball.
He was traded to baseball. That's what's amazing. They tried to turn him into a third baseman. He's like, I've never played baseball.
And then he punched Tony Gwynn.
He punched Tony Gwynn. He punched Dave Winfield.
Who does that?
Right. So he was traded to the Chargers. That's who he was traded to. He was traded to the Chargers to compete with Dan Fouts. But we know how that turned out.
Yeah.
The Chargers kept him 1 year. He did not punch Dan Fouts, but he was cut during the next year, 1977 training camp. But somehow the Cowboys turned this guy who had 1 game on Thanksgiving in 1974 where he threw to an uncovered Drew Pearson at the end of the game, inexplicably. And they got a 1 and a 2 from the Chargers.
That's amazing.
From it. So that was it's a terrible memory for me, but that to me ultimately is always the greatest Thanksgiving game I ever saw.
That's good. I don't think we can top those. That's our list of 5 or 3.
There's your 5.
There's your 5.
I got 2 moments.
Well, I mean, are you going to give us the Phil Luck coin toss?
Wait, I'm sorry. Here's Jason with more.
Oh. Well, when The Simpsons is older than you are, then my knowledge, or I should say my experience with Thanksgiving Day football really didn't kick in until the mid-90s.
But The Simpsons, by the way, O.J. Simpson ran for like 275 yards.
O.J. Simpson had a huge game in 1976 against the Lions.
Yeah, on Thanksgiving. So,
by the way, real quick, what ever happened to that guy? He was like in movies.
He was traded to the Padres.
Right, but I know he was like in movies.
He was in the Naked Gun movies.
Right. Yeah.
No, he did some ads like the Hertz rental car.
I guess he just retired.
Yeah,
raised his family.
You don't hear from him much.
Yeah. Jason, go ahead.
So my team, the Giants, don't really play on Thanksgiving all too often, but my enemy team, the Dallas Cowboys, do. And in 1998. Little backtracking here, Jerry Jones decided to take Greg Ellis, I believe it was, over Randy Moss.
Greg Ellis from North Carolina?
Yes, defensive end. Over Randy Moss in the draft. His rookie season, Randy Moss goes into...
time out for 1 second. What do you think of the story so far?
I'm still hung up on enemy team.
Yeah, okay. All right, go ahead. Go ahead. All right, just pick it back up.
Fair enough. Randy Moss, 3 catches for 51, 55, and 56 yards, 2 touchdowns. 1 was a flea flicker. It was awesome.
It was great. You got to see the enemy team lose.
Right.
Yeah.
I like watching the Dallas Cowboys lose.
No, it's fun that's the good thing about having the Cowboys on.
You can always somebody to root against.
There's always someone to root against.
Are they playing this Thanksgiving? No, they're playing They're playing the Giants on Sunday, I think.
The Eagles on Thanksgiving
Day. On Thanksgiving Day.
Right, but so I thought maybe the Giants were playing, but the Cowboys have the Giants this week.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, you had one. I mean, I can't believe I'm doing this. You had one other story?
The butt fumble.
Huh?
The
the
butt-
butt fumble. Mark Sanchez. That was on Thanksgiving?
Yeah.
That was in that night game.
Yeah.
The night game doesn't count in this, I don't think. Even though I brought a night game up, so it should count because the butt fumble was great. But Thanksgiving is during the day. That's, you know, it's.
I'll tell one very brief Thanksgiving story. So I grew up in Washington, D.C. with as a Washington football fan and a Bullets fan. I was an Oakland A's fan, but there was no baseball there. And as you know, I'm a serious sports fan and always have been and cared a lot about it. And when I was a kid, talked about little else. I didn't read books, you know, or anything. You know, I just watched sports and talked about it, read the paper. So
like now.
Right, pretty much like now, right. I have books now.
You do have, but you didn't even have them then.
Right, I didn't have them then. I still don't read them. They look good. They make you look smart. So I go to my then girlfriend Nick Robinson's house in Miami, right? And Nick was a television producer at the station I worked for, and a great girl. And my mom comes down from about an hour north of Miami to spend Thanksgiving with Nick and her family. And her family, they'd grown up in Miami. They're big Dolphin fans, big Hurricanes fans. They're football people, right? Nick is, and Nick's sister is, and her parents too. And so we're eating during the second game, the 4 o'clock game, and it's Washington and Dallas, right? Who've played often on Thanksgiving. Yeah. And sure enough, they're eating, and they had a lot of people there, but they arranged the TV because they're kind, decent people, right, and football people, so that we're eating, but they're like, Ben, we're putting the TV up so you can see the game. And I'm like, you don't need to do that. They're like, it's Thanksgiving, there's football on. I don't care. Watch TV while you eat. Let's go. And my mom.
It was the dad making the excuse. Like, I'm doing this for Ben.
Totally. Yeah. Everybody wanted it. Right. Everybody wanted it. Everybody wanted the damn game on. And so they put the game up, and my mother sitting next to me says, well, we're eating. Why do we have the football game on? Like, it's Thanksgiving, Mom. It's okay. It's in the distance. I make them turn the sound down. Yeah. I'm like, I'll just keep an eye on it while we're eating. But it's nice. They did it. I didn't ask for it, Mom. They did it. They're happy to do it.
Let's not bother these nice people.
Right. And then Mom says to me, her son, who she raised in Washington, D.C., a huge sports fan, she says,
I remember this.
She says, so why do you care about this game? I'm like, well, it's the Redskins. And she goes, well, since when did you become a Washington fan?
I love this story.
Who are you? Who are you? Well, I just saw her in Florida last month, and I had on an Oakland A's t-shirt. And she said, again, why Oakland? I'm like, I don't know, the pennants in the room, the framed poster of Mitchell Page, the A's all the time, can we go get a Washington Star to read the A's score? Can we talk about the A's?
My mother would know who Chris Chambliss was. She would know the 49ers, yeah.
All right. Happy Thanksgiving.